Now, as always, it's been a busy week. Time to look back at the last few days with the host of the Daily Express's Brexit, the final countdown podcast, Becca Hudson, and the Guido Fawkes blog reporter, Tom Harwood. Welcome to you both. Good morning. Good morning. The story that keeps on running, keeps on giving. Should we talk about the Sandringham Summit?
Yeah, we're in week 2 of Megxit. We had the Sandringham Summit on Monday, where the senior royals, bar Meghan Markle, who didn't Skype in, attended to discuss the Sussex's plan to pursue a progressive new role within the royal family that sees them splitting their time between here and not Calabasas next to the Kardashians, but actually in Canada.
Actually, that's a misnomer, isn't it, Megxit? Because it's not just...
Well, no, it's... Yeah, with a little H in it, you're completely right. And we've seen that the Queen has kind of committed to their plans. It was a very friendly, fluffy statement from the Queen, we were saying earlier. Very friendly, family mentioned 4 times. And I think this is great. You know, I think losing Meghan and Harry would be a great shame to this country. I think they represent something really interesting on the world stage, super progressive, super telegenic. I do feel a little bit sorry for them, so I'm kind of glad that the royal family is supporting them in this whole new, progressive chapter for the royal family.
Although it does feel a bit like déjà vu all over again. We're entering now a transition period for these 2 people as they move to their new Super Canada model it does ring a lot of bells.
You bring everything back to Brexit.
Oh, I mean, you can't not. It's been the dominant theme, and ultimately this is how things are going to go forward. But no, I think it is a shame, really, that this is something that hasn't been anticipated, really. These are 2 people who signed up to this institution. Sort of, you'd have assumed that they knew what they were getting in for, that you can't make political statements if you want to be a senior royal, that you have to have that sort of decorum about yourself, that you can't behave like an ordinary celebrity if you're going to be a member representing the royal family. Well, ultimately, it's sort of, I think it's more honest for them to step back and say, OK, if I want to live a life of a celebrity, if I want to have all the access, do the Disney voiceovers, if I want to sort of lead that Hollywood-style life, then perhaps I shouldn't be trying to represent the royal family at the same time. I think it's probably a good move, but a sad one, and one that they should have considered before they had the billion people watched fairy tale wedding.
Well, I mean, you say that, they knew what they were signing up to, but Harry's born into this. He didn't sign up. This is his birthright.
And he behaved much more regally, I suppose, before this whole period. It's actually ironic that Meghan's the person who should be understanding this a bit more. She signed up to it. She didn't have to marry Harry, and yet she chose to, and she took all the regalia. She took the title. She took the superstardom to an extent, the wedding, the regalia, all of that.
The heart wants what the heart wants, Tom.
Well, perhaps, but ultimately, this should have been seen coming. This was not an intractable problem.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, Becca, you don't really know until you're in it, do you?
Exactly. And
I mean, nobody knows all the machinations behind in the palace and the courtiers and everything that goes on. We heard years ago from Diana, who said, mentioned them as they, and they're quite controlling.
Yeah, and this just represents, we knew that the royal family are kind of aspiring for a more slimmed-down model. We knew that they wanted to kind of divide the princes up between a Commonwealth focus and a domestic focus. So I kind of think it's not quite as drastic as maybe everyone thinks, and that, they're remaining... Canada is part of a Commonwealth. It has a monarchy. They're not moving in with Oprah. And we kind of get to keep them as part of our, the soft influence that we're going to need post-Brexit when we're kind of reintroducing Britain to the world. So I think kind of keeping them on side is key.
But I worry if the monarchy becomes political, it loses the broad-based support of the country. The most important thing of this institution is it stays above politics. That's really important.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with you on that. To the Labour leadership, where we do want them to be very political,
yes.
Rebecca Long-Bailey and Emily Thornberry officially launching their campaigns today. You would have thought they'd launched weeks ago by all the coverage there's been.
Well, looking at Rebecca Long-Bailey, it looked like she launched actually before the general election, producing flashy videos, having her own logos designed, splashing social media with her own personal branding. This has been something that's been going on for a very long time. And of course, just yesterday, she secured the endorsement of Momentum, that campaign that launched Jeremy Corbyn to the leadership. Although there was a lot of questions around how much they're actually backing her. Momentum sent out a poll to their members where they gave the members one choice, yes or no, to Rebecca Long-Bailey, a sort of EU-style election. And beyond that, only 5,000 members of Momentum voted for her. out of a membership claimed to be 40,000. So perhaps this isn't the sort of candidacy that has the fizz and the pop and the popularity that Jeremy Corbyn's did.
As a Brexiteer, and I don't know if you are a Tory, but I mean somewhere within that sort of political field, would you welcome a Rebecca Long-Bailey?
I think to some extent Rebecca Long-Bailey would be the most dangerous of all of the Labour Party leaders, because she is the sort of person who's giving Jeremy Corbyn 10 out of 10. I think all of the candidates would, to a greater or lesser extent, be too close to that Corbyn agenda. None of them have repudiated it. None of them have said the real reason why everything went wrong for the Labour Party in that election. So to that extent, any Labour Party leader would be damaging. I think Rebecca Long-Bailey would be the most damaging. She's clearly the most hardline and the most unrepentant about the agenda that they put forward.
Sorry, I was going to say, I'm very excited about Lisa Nandy, who I think kind of did a stellar performance on Andrew Neil earlier this week. A little bit of the dark horse candidate in the race. But she kind of, you know, she did come out and call out Corbyn for his kind of abysmal handling of the Skripal attempted murder, and, you know, called out how terrible the Labour Remain campaign was during the Brexit referendum. You know, and, you know, she looks and sounds a bit more like kind of the Red Wall, which is what we're all obsessed with winning back. And I feel like Rebecca Long-Bailey can't decide whether there's a hyphen in her name, but Lisa Nandy feels like she's a little bit of a breath of fresh air.
Right, but isn't all of this criticism that we're hearing from people like Lisa Nandy, it's all about messaging. Oh, we weren't trusted. The message, the policies were right, but the messaging was wrong. No, the policies were wrong. There is something deeply troubling about a party that's talking about nationalising assets, about stealing property from people, about moving to the sort of economy that we've seen in places around the world that has failed and driven people into poverty and misery. That is the ultimate issue, and we should be talking much more about the policy agenda and how deeply damaging and right the country was to reject that, rather than just how it's all packaged.
Oh, well, we shall wait and see how this progresses. You've got a while in this campaigning to go yet. And now, Becca, you are in charge of the Brexit countdown.
Yes.
As it were.
Yeah.
Is that countdown going to end with bongs?
Absolutely. Even if I have to scale the side of Big Ben myself, I'll be ringing a bell. I mean, I can't believe we're even having an argument about this. This is a hugely significant moment in the national history. Whether you agree with Brexit or not, you know, we're leaving on the 31st, it's the end of Dry January, it's the end of Veganuary, and we're leaving the EU. I mean, we need to ring a bell. And the idea that it's going to cost £500,000 feels perhaps a little implausible. But this government kind of campaigned on Brexit. They took everyone's Brexit votes. And if they can't be bothered to ring a bell, I think...
Yeah, but £500,000
to ring a neck.
Is that because they're talking about the fact that there's no floor? They'd have to put a temporary floor in and then get the mechanism up and then take it all out again. And...
There's a lot of
But you
noise.
think it's worth it?
I think we've got to mark it somehow. I think if it's really important to people who voted for Brexit, they clearly want to celebrate this. It's a bell, it's 30 seconds, and it means an awful lot to the people that put Boris Johnson in number 10. So I think maybe a little bit of generosity wouldn't go amiss. And they've already raised £153,000 on this GoFundMe. So, you know, the public will is there.
Right, that's surely that's the point, right? I don't think I'd appreciate it to be funded out of general taxation. That doesn't seem right. But it seems absolutely bizarre that the parliamentary authorities will not accept private funding for this. Private funding is how we've done so many things in the history of this country. It's how Trafalgar Square was built. It's how so many things over the course of the last decades and centuries have been done. And it seems really, really odd that the parliamentary authorities are now not wanting to accept people to pay them money.
What about rubbing people's noses in it, the Remainers who just think...
Do we think they wouldn't notice that we've left the EU otherwise? I mean, come on, this is ridiculous.
They could just put their headphones on and ignore the bell. I mean, we can't.
It's 11 bongs in Westminster. I mean, you really have to be tuning in to pay attention.
Yeah.
Let's look at some... I can hear a chime, actually. Let's look at well, staying with politics, but international politics in Iran. We've got the Supreme Leader actually giving a sermon today, first time in 8 years. You sense that the climate within the country is changing with people actually dissenting.
Yeah, to some extent, this has really surprised me. I mean, I wasn't a big cheerleader for Trump's action, but it, to some extent, actually doesn't look like it has gone down all that badly from a Western perspective. We're seeing that the Iranian regime is not as powerful in their country as they thought they were. We're seeing that the Iranian regime actually has overstepped and in its response, limited though it was, it has become deeply unpopular. And there is now a movement within Iran almost pushing for some sort of reform. And that actually could be quite a positive step. And I'm quite surprised by that reaction. I think the UK government has played a pretty welcome role in this all, calling for de-escalation on all sides. And that's to be commended as well.
Yeah.
It could very easily be quashed, though, couldn't it, by the Ayatollah, by what he says today, and then by any following sort of crackdown within the country. This rebellion, or whatever it may be, building up, could very easily be quashed.
Yeah, I mean, I think no one would suggest that that this tension has de-escalated and that the crisis is over. But just to kind of return to your point about how we've handled it as British government, I think there was a lot of concern that Boris Johnson was going to suddenly kind of follow Trump and that we were going to kind of support him left, right, and centre with any other assassinations he wanted to carry out. And I think we've kind of been remarkably balanced. And I think if this is like the future for how the UK performs on the world stage, sort of acting as that mediator between Europe and the E3 and Washington, I think we can welcome it.
We've got about 60 seconds left to talk about Northern Ireland, the return of Stormont.
Oh, just 60 seconds,
last.
OK.
Well, I mean, it does show that sort of this whole thing was never an intractable issue. And to such a great extent, the more chaos there is in Westminster, the more that's exported out to all parts of our political system. Now that there's stability in Westminster, there's a majority government, things are getting done, and that can only be a positive step.
Yeah, I mean, Northern Ireland's going to be hugely affected by what happens at the end of the 31st of January, not just the bell chiming. So I think it's incredibly important that we have enough, that devolution continues and that Stormont's kind of, a robust member of the devolved assembly, certainly.
Okay. Look, very good to see you both.
Thank you both.
Thank you very much indeed.
Should we see what's happening with the weather now for you?